Next, I want to introduce a guy that I met at the Abolish the Fed rally. It was on November 22nd, 2013, on the 50th anniversary?
50th.
Yeah, it's either 50 or 60, you have to do the math, of JFK's assassination, and we all kind of went down there to the Federal Reserve building. And it was kind of interesting to me. One of the things I really noticed down there, and I actually picked up the microphone and talked about it for a couple of minutes, even though nobody remembers. Down there at the Federal Reserve, there are these columns. There are these huge, big Italian columns. And they were on the very top of these columns there. You know what they have? You know what's up there? Nothing. The symbolism is so apparent when you understand how that organization works, how our monetary system, it's air. There's nothing behind the currency. It struck out. That's what they're trying to tell us with those currencies. But anyway, I met Derrick down there that day, and I was just absolutely struck by this individual that I had met. Because it's like, to me, everybody has to be their own judge, but it's just like when Derrick walks in the room, it just changes the room. There is, and I firmly believe it's because of the strength of conviction that he has in spreading the truth. You know, the scriptures tell us that God is truth. And so anyone who is speaking the truth is speaking for God. So anyone who's going to speak the truth is really kind of a prophet of God, are they not?
Yes.
So if your intention is to spread the truth, there's also a scriptural aspect that people are going to notice it, because people understand when you're talking the truth. And if all you do is from the gut, lay it out there for people to understand, people will take notice. And I will say this, and we talked about this morning on the radio. Derrick he took part in the 2014 U.S. Senate primaries on the Republican Party. And there were, seven debates? Derrick Grayson laid these guys to waste. If anyone had been watching this, they would have noticed, wait a minute, I don't even know who this is, but no one is really competing with him. And that's because I firmly believe that he was the one guy on the stage above anyone else who was actually from the heart telling the truth. And I so admire this guy because he's an individual. You know, people wonder, what can I do? What can I do to make a difference? Well, Lord, that's wide open. It's not necessarily what you can do, it's what you decide to do. Well, when confronted with a tyrannical government taking over our country and coming to a certain gritty understanding of that, then Derrick was placed in a position where he's either got to do something or just give up. And so I so admire anyone who will go out and seek office anyway, because they have a feel that they can help things. But I particularly admire Derrick Grayson because, holy mackerel, he didn't just decide to be on the school board or something. He went after the U.S. Senate and ran a statewide campaign. He never turns down the opportunity to speak to people. He will always be there when he says he's going to be there. And when he gets there, you're going to hear somebody who's going to tell you the truth as he knows it. And so I would like everyone to give a welcoming hand to Derrick Grayson.
Sorry, Dr. Late.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm not going to use that mic. I talk loud.
One thing I am going to do, a couple of things first. I'm going to let you pass this around. This is some educational information. You may not want it, and that's okay. And there may not be enough to go around, so give it to somebody who may want one. The information that you will find contained herein is not conjecture. It's not something I dreamt up. It's actually the real deal about what folks are doing to you in Washington, D.C. And here are some other sheets that you can pass around. There certainly aren't enough of these. And I'm going to talk about those in a bit. I'm doing something a little different than I usually do. And that is, I'm going to, as soon as I find my speech. I wrote a speech. I generally don't write speeches. Anybody that has ever heard me speak know that I kind of just go with the flow. But I want to make sure I am thorough. Tonight, we are officially announcing our exploratory committee for 2016. I have every confidence that we will run. But I want to do some acknowledgments. I would be remiss if I did not. I was made possible by the people that have supported my campaign. Every single person that was on our campaign in 2014 was a volunteer. They were not paid. They received no salary. They burnt their own gas. They put wear and tear on their vehicles, spent their own money. What we did raise, we were able to use and run a statewide campaign, of which I was told in the very beginning that I would not be able to do. It was an educational experience. Jason Turner, Alex Jimenez, Neil White, my senior advisor, and Hank, who has just been giving me tunnels and tunnels of education that I have to pick and choose what I'm going to study now because there's so much information that's taking place. And my friend over here in the black hat, I call him Johnny Cash. Always been there, supported me. My friend back here, at the back of the room, Bruno. So there have just been a lot of people that have been there to bring me through this process. And I've become friends with Mike, learned a great deal from him. And you don't know how much of a blessing that it is. That is the reason why I'm going to run again. But we can't just do it by ourselves. We have to have help. And I'm hoping that tonight will be the start of the beginning of getting that help. So I'm going to be reading some things because you need to know who I am and why I'm doing this. Something I generally don't do is share my thought process in outlining a speech. This is the first. I feel why I'm running again, and therefore I need you to understand me. If you decide to support me this time, any level of commitment you bring to the table, I will consider it sufficient. And I thank you for it. As I said, I don't generally write scripted speeches, but I want to talk about some specific things. I was where many voters are, and that is caught up with blind spots. And the best testimony is to tell people about your blind spots, your issues, so that they can see, oh, so he's going through that too. And if he can overcome it, I can overcome it too. I just got to follow the same process. You teach a child how to add 2 and 2, then that child can teach somebody else how to add 2 and 2, and it becomes exponential in time. But there were people who had to teach me. So let me share some of my embarrassing blind spots. One of the first one, a loyalty to party line. Blind trust in men and not the Constitution. Now, I was taught the Constitution. I knew about the Constitution growing up. But growing up in a black household, it was Democratic. And I got caught up in that. It wasn't until I got into the military, serving under Carter and Reagan, that there was a paradigm shift in my thought process. I wanted to be a business owner in America. But only thing the Democratic Party, because as I began to research them and learn, only thing that they offered the black community was more dependency, which I did not want. I don't want to be dependent upon anybody. I want to run my own show. I don't want you running the show for me. That's why I only did 6 years in the military. I didn't want nobody telling me when to get up, keep my bunk made, got to wear a t-shirt. I wanted to call my own shots. So I knew I needed to get out and find another path in life, and it mandated self-sufficiency and not dependence upon the government. And the conservative Republican Party appealed to me because they talked about the ability for an individual to do what they need to do and government not being in their way. So I was able to clear up a blind spot of Democrat loyalty, and I moved to the Republican Party. But that's another story, because another blind spot developed. But I fixed that one quickly. Another blind spot. Alan Keyes and Pastor James David Manning warned everybody about Obama. If anybody pays attention and goes back, those two men, and they were lambasted by the black community and put on the air by corporate-backed media in an effort to make them look as though they were crazy, much like they did Ron Paul, because they was talking about this guy. I drank that Kool-Aid, and I'm ashamed to say I voted for Obama. But you know why I voted for Obama? The same reason we got the Tea Party. The Republican Party had stopped doing what they used to do. So I was looking for another way. And Obama sold me on hope and change. But because I am astute, and I read and I study and I know how to connect the dots, 18 months after being in office, he was following the same policies of Bush. Everything that Bush did, Obama did it better. Bush gave us TARP. Obama expanded that. Bailed out the bankers, the whole 9 yards. I mean, just went hog wild. But we forget that. And so I was in a moment of desperation, ready to give up and quit. And a friend of mine by the name of Michael J. Smith told me about Ron Paul and the Constitution. So I started studying again. And I started learning. I had many conversations with Alex and Hank. I've been learning and learning. Every day I learn something. I learned something from this gentleman tonight. I'm like a sponge. I need to know everything that I can, because people perish because of a lack of knowledge. When you don't know what they're doing to you, you don't know how to turn it around. And I'm tired of them bending me over the table. I've had enough. I've stood up. And the sweet spot of an awakening, I looked at my daughters. If I quit and don't do something for them, what worth do I have? A man that's not willing to die for anything is not worth living. And I'm willing to die for the future of my children, because my father was willing to die for mine and his father before him. I want there to be something for my children, and I'm not going to sit down and allow them to continue to take it away from me. I'm not going to do it. So I got involved politically and started campaigning for Ron Paul. And I learned. I learned how crooked the game is, how the deck is stacked. I call them the royals of both parties. I saw the shenanigans taking place in the back room. because I was a delegate. I saw how they talked to people, how they treated people when they didn't toe the party line. I was even told, they called me for a meeting, they said, Derrick, it's not your time yet. Pick something further down the trough. I'm not a horse. Why I got to pick something further down the trough? Because other people have been running and it's their turn. Why don't you run against Hank Johnson? And I'm going to be blunt, and some of you may squinch, but I'm going to tell you just like I told them. I'm not going to run against Hank Johnson. And the way I interpret this conversation, you're telling me you don't want me to run against your golden fair-haired child. You'd rather me go run against the other nigger down there in South DeKalb County. Ain't going to happen. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose big. It takes more than waving a flag. It takes self-study. You need to learn about the Constitution. You need to focus on what's happening with national and international events. Hank has brought me a long way when it comes to that, as well as Alex. These are my two go-to guys when I want to know how what's happening here domestically is tied to what's happening around the world. Because it's all linked and tied together. Then I ran and I learned more. I learned about the circle of loot. Real simple process. When the press was the free press, not corporate-backed media, they were able to print the truth and not under duress. Not worried about being that they let the chips fall where they may. They took down a president, Nixon, because they were able to tell the truth. And when they showed the policemen beating men, women, and children with billy clubs, and firemen turning water hoses on women and children because they were protesting Jim Crow, that changed America. They saw the dirty underside of what was happening in this country, and they did something about it and stopped it. But that's when the press was free. The press is no longer free. They do not tell you the truth. They manipulate you. And the way the circle of loot works, they said, we can never let this happen again. So the 1%ers started buying up the media outlets. They own the majority of television, radio, and TV. And they dictate, television, radio, newspaper, TV. They dictate what these people write and print, and the slant that they put on it, so that they continue to manipulate the American voter. So, the 1%ers own the corporate-backed media, the corporations that put out this misinformation. They in turn donate money to PACs and super PACs. PACs and super PACs in turn give money to various campaigns, and they give it to candidate A and candidate B. Why? Because no matter which candidate wins, you still lose. Because that candidate is going to go and do the bidding of the special interests that are behind the PACs and the super PACs. And when they spend the money on the advertising that gets you to go down the path they want you to do, it goes right back to the 1%ers because they own the corporate-backed media in the first place. That's the circle of loot. Nobody loses but the American people. Nobody loses. I learned about that when I ran. After the second debate at Kennesaw State University, they did an online poll who won the debate. When it came back that Derrick Grayson was number one, they didn't ask that question no more. We don't need them to know about him. We need to not talk about him. If they didn't mention my name at all, they would say, and Derrick Grayson was in attendance whenever they talked about it. And something that really disappointed me, Herman Cain heard me speak in Macon and got on his radio show, and somebody called in and asked him who was running. He only mentioned the top 4 prior recycled candidates: Kingston, Gingrey, Handel, Brown, and Purdue, 5. Didn't even mention my name, and the man saw me on stage. That's where we are, and that's when I realized he was one of the pawns too. A lot of people have been talking about Ben Carson, and don't get mad with me, folks. I'm gonna say some things that's going to be hurtful, and I'm gonna explain to you why it's hurtful. It's going to get the brass tacks. What makes them able to do what they do is the power that they possess in the uninformed voter. Let me say that again. What makes them able to do what they do is the power in the uninformed voter. That's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is cognitive dissonance. I can tell you the truth about somebody. You're my guy. That's what I call them, my guys. And you just don't know what to do. You'll find a way to not accept it, but it's true. Verifiable. Now see, I tell folk all the time, I deal with low-hanging fruit, stuff that's verifiable, it's provable. It's even on government letterhead in most cases. So you ain't got to wonder about it. I can't tell you the number of times we went somewhere and spoke and people would come and say, you know, I didn't know you was running, but after I've heard you speak, I'm voting for you. Time and time. We have a very high conversion rate. But there were some people that still were not willing to give up their my guy, no matter what. If you took one of these sheets, turn to the page, this page here. These my guys, the 10 Republican candidates in Georgia, all 10 voted for Boehner. Now, raise your hands if you think it is okay if an overwhelming number of people want something done that is lawful, moral, and constitutional, and your representative does something to the contrary. If that's okay, please raise your hands. Come on, man. I ain't gonna be mad. Turn the camera off, Ted, so they can raise their hands. A couple of these guys said, I'm not going to vote for Boehner, and voted for him anyway. There's something wrong with that. And then a couple of them decided to give a reason why. There is no justification for not doing what we asked you to do. You serve us.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
When I first ran and made my first announcement, I said, if you send me to D.C., and put me in that room, I promise you I will change it, because the room will become observable. When something is observable, people tend to do things a little bit different.
Yes, they do.
They do things differently. I will serve you. I never said on stage, I want to be your leader. In the first couple of debates, and I will be the leader that will do this, and I will be the kind of leader that will do that. And when I stood up and said, you know what, folks, I don't want to be a leader. I think you're smart enough to lead your own lives. Yeah. Send me to D.C. to represent the best interests of Georgians. Let me be your servant. Right. They stopped saying they wanted to be a leader. I was the only candidate that said the reason we are where we are is because we violate the Constitution. Yes. Well, Paul Brown, he has a 90% constitutional right. So if that 10% violates 40% of my constitutional protections, like the violation of my 4th Amendment rights, 5th Amendment rights, if that's okay with you, raise your hands. Go ahead, come on. Come on, raise your hands. The only thing that's acceptable to me is 100% of the Constitution, 100% of the time. Amen. Amen. Now, I'm going to get to some brass tacks, because I don't want to keep y'all too long. I put a sheet on here where it talks about what you can do to make a change. I want you to check that out, and I want to read something to you. The 10 things that are going to be required of you if you want to see a difference in this country. First, you need to recognize that a massive change will only come through a revolution in thought. A revolution in thought. This gentleman here talked about 2 revolutions before. That's when change comes, is when there's a revolution, but we need a revolution in thought. And why do we need a revolution in thought? I just explained to you, their power comes from the uninformed voter. And people that are stuck on my guy, cognitive dissonance, that will not, I can give them, I just gave you verifiable proof that the 10 GOP representatives here in Georgia, every single one of them out of the 14, the other 4 are Democrat, voted for John Boehner, who is a proven rhino. Proven. And a vindictive, I won't say that. Second, take an honest and fearless inventory of the current situation. People, nothing has gotten better. Nothing. Debt continues to increase. Fed continues to print money. Wars continue to rage. Nothing has gotten better. And now this is where I'm going to mess some of you up. About your my guys. So you got some people up there that everybody thinks is fighting for them. Rand Paul, Justin Amash, Ted Cruz, and a few others. Can you say ineffective? Why do I need you if you can't stop the ship from going in the wrong direction? Well, there aren't enough of us up here. That's because y'all operate in a vacuum, and I'm going to give you a perfect example. Ted Cruz told the American people, I'm going to filibuster to stop Obamacare. Guess what? He couldn't have stopped Obamacare, and he knew it in the first place. They shut down the government and only hurt federal employees, non-essential employees, while they still got their paychecks.
Yeah, sure did.
Most people I know live from payday to payday. Yeah, they got reimbursed, but they had to go, 2-3 weeks without a paycheck?
Yeah.
And he knew that they couldn't defund Obamacare in the first place because it was passed under mandatory spending and it was the law of the land. Any budget passed, it was going to be funded anyway. But they didn't tell you that because they wanted you to think that they were working for them. This last I like to say omnibus, but that word is hard for me. Everybody keeps telling you, well, we don't want to do this, but now is not the right time, and when we get the numbers, we're going to deal with defunding Obama's amnesty. Obama ain't gave no amnesty. Obama put a moratorium on deportations, but here's the deal. They don't want them deported because people make money off of illegal immigrants.
Yes.
They don't want them gone. He just put a measure in place that will keep them here. And guess what, people? They will never get amnesty because they will never pass an amnesty bill. Obama just fixed it. All you seeing is just theater. But the real reason, and not a single person in D.C. other than Elizabeth Warren, and she operated in a vacuum on it. She went to her colleagues who could care less rather than coming to the American people, because that's where the power is with you. Rather than doing that, she talked on the floor to them. There's a provision in there under Dodd-Frank that was signed under Obama after the bailout of all the banks before. That provision prevented banks from being able to have access to investors' money, taxpayers' savings. They gutted that. They took it out. It's gone. Now, if they're going to reverse themselves on it, that's left to be seen. But the fact that they voted for it and did it, there's something wrong with that. It passed in the House, and it passed in the Senate. And you know how we felt about all the bailouts. Let me get through this and then I'll take a few questions. The third thing is understand that the federal courts are part of the federal government, which means they're operating to protect the people that are there. Everybody likes to blame one person, Obama or Bush. What makes them possible are the 535 people that are in D.C. plus those other 9. At any time they wanted, they could have brought charges against Obama for violating his oath of office. They could have done, the courts could have acted. But they won't, because they want him to do what he's doing. And the Supreme Court just made a couple of rulings. You've heard about the militarization of police. Police can pull you over for the wrong reason, but as long as they have a basic understanding of the reason why they pulled you over, it's a legal stop, and if they happen to find you breaking another law, then it would be a good case. This came from the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And another thing that they don't tell you because it doesn't fit the narrative, they'll tell you about black people getting killed by the cops, but they aren't telling you about all the white people being killed by the cops.
That is right.
It's happening to everybody. But cognitive dissonance with middle-class white America, oh, it can't happen to me. Y'all better wake up and smell this coffee.
Right, yeah.
Except that our problems started well before the president took office. They did. Well before Obama. Obama is just continuing it and has accelerated it to no ends. And the next person is going to be worse if we don't elect a strict constitutionalist. View both major political parties as enemies of of liberty. Now, I'm a Republican. I'm going to die one. And I'm fighting to get the bastards in the Republican Party out.
Good.
So that it can be returned to constitutional country. So I have not abandoned the Republican Party. I believe in those conservative ideals and those principles. And I will fight to clean this party out, but I can't do it by myself. Number 6, humbly admit that you've never cast a vote for federal office that has reduced the power of the federal government. Go on and admit it. Go on and admit it. Go on and admit it. Nobody that you have voted for has done anything that has reduced the power of government. Not a single soul. Because they go up there and they become like the room, or they're nothing more than controlled opposition, or they put on theater to make you think that they're working for them, rather than exposing the people that are destroying this country on a day-by-day basis. And then I was in the same room with some of them 10 folk from Georgia Heights and Collins and some of the Woodall. Heard them stand up. I'm the leader that you need. I will represent you. I'm a true conservative. I'm not a right. I'm going to... Let me stop with that one. 7, admit that the feds will never stop the feds. Ronald Reagan already told you the government won't fix itself. Wake up. Number 8, be ready for the long haul. It ain't easy. We ran a statewide race on $25,000. $25,000. Average cost per those 6,700 votes was about $4 per vote. Of course, that was the most efficient campaign ever ran.
Yeah.
But we touched a lot of people. And we can touch many more. Number 9, one step at a time. I'm taking the first step. I will give you and my family everything I have, including my blood, to tell you the truth and expose the people that are destroying this country. I will not go to D.C. and become like the room. I will not tell you one thing, do something different, and then explain to you why I violated my promise to you. I won't do that. I will not break my word to you. Number 10, be entirely ready to take a new approach to stopping the federal government. That's when you help Derrick Grayson get to D.C. That's that new step. Because if you send me to D.C., folks, I'm taking you with me. I'm going to take a broom, a flashlight, and a whistle. I will sound the alarm when they're getting ready to try and stick it to you. I will sweep the trash out into the streets so you can see what's taking place up in here. And I will shine a flashlight in that room so that you are aware of who the guilty are. And when I do that, I'm counting on you to take out the trash. See, that's where the power is. While we still have the vote, the ballot, we best be using it because they're getting ready to take that away from us if we don't do something different. I'll take a few questions. If you have none, I'm done.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
Am I bad because I have my own cat?
No.
Would you accept money for my cat?
As long as you don't ask me for anything in return.
Good answer.
Yes, sir.
What kind of a business are you running prior to running for election? What kind of?
I have a software company that sold bail bond software to bonding companies for the last 25 years. And I've also been a contractor with various entities. Right now, I am a network engineer for MARTA. Yes, sir.
Ms. Card, your last entry is education. You say more local and parental control. Why not all local and parental control? I don't want the federal government to have a Department of Education. I want them to have one degree of influence over the way we educate our children.
Okay, I'll change the word to total. I want the Department of Education gone. The Department of Education destroyed in the city black schools. I'm on the left side with that. But you know, I don't actually write everything that's on there. But I'm on record as saying I want the Department of Education gone. I want the IRS gone. I want all of that. I'm for limited government. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm trying to understand why they did the communist, as you say, the bill before the new Senate and Congress was seated. And also, what else I need to do to help clean up y'all mess? Because I'm only 40 and I'm waiting with the hippie times. So what can I do to help clean up y'all mess?
Okay, now. The last mess I made was when I voted for Obama. I fixed that. So what you got now is not any of my mess. When I voted in this last election, there was only one Republican that I voted for, and that was Richard Wood, and I'm waiting to see what he's going to do about Common Core. If he does absolutely nothing, I will campaign against him in the next round. I campaign against Nathan Deal because of Common Core and other damnable deeds that he has done to this country, like passing that new carrot and stick legislation about you ain't got to pay ad valorem anymore. That was carrot and stick. And the stick is any transaction now between private individuals, somebody got to pay a sales tax, and they determine the amount of that sales tax. So, you know, I fixed my problems. Now I'm trying to get everybody on the same page that I am. And that is, I want you to stop voting for your my guys and start voting for constitutionalists.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Yes, I'm gonna finish that.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to leave a legacy for my grandkids. Where I see the future of, and the future of the choices, the morals, the values that I'm helping to raise them to have, is non-existent anymore. So what step after I leave this room and further my career, Saturday and beyond, what can I do to keep that legacy for my future grandkids, future great-great-great-grandkids?
Talk.
You're responsible.
Talk, spread it.
You can bring your children to the Tea Party.
Yeah.
You know, you need to cut off funding if you can't get them. Whatever you're doing to help them stay away from the process, you need to cut it out.
More importantly, you're responsible for raising your children. Nobody else is. It's up to you to train them up in the way in which they should go. And it is up to you to lay the foundation for them to follow. Now, when they become grown,
And they're grown.
they're grown.
So one of them is
But
actually,
let them not be able to say, Mama didn't tell me.
one of them, actually, I'm bringing one Saturday with me to the Tea Party convention. She's 20, she's a college student, and I feel it's time for her to step out and this is the real world. So,
Let me get Alex. Alex?
Derrick, thanks again for an amazing talk. I always learn something new listening to you in every one of these talks, and thank you very much for that. I'd like to introduce an idea, which is we're very focused nationally, especially the Tea Parties and Liberty movements, with the idea of holding our elected officials accountable. But I think, if not to put words in your mouth, but I would say that one thing that we need to do is we need to understand that in order to hold someone else accountable in an elected office, we have to know how to hold ourselves accountable.
right.
Okay? And so if we're going to go with a yardstick or a ruler or a scale to go and measure and try to find something lacking, find them lacking, we're going to have to know what to measure. So if we're a citizenry that doesn't know how to hold ourselves accountable and doesn't know what we're supposed to know, to hold an elected official accountable, I think that the blame, and I hate to use the word blame, part of the blame rests with us. Because ultimately we're the boss, but we're also the auditor. We're there to audit what they do. And if we don't know what we're doing, we really are paying lip service to the idea of holding them accountable. We have to hold ourselves accountable first, rise to the occasion, be capable of intelligently holding them accountable, other than complaining.
Well, I don't just complain about folk. I tell you what they voted on, low-hanging fruit. So I'm not just whistling Dixie. And I tell you, even if you think they're working for you, they're ineffective. And that's what separates me from most other folk. I don't want any more ineffective politicians. I want people that can get the job done, that can stop and right the ship, because the ship has not changed course and we are heading for the destruction of this country. So anything short of that is unacceptable to me. If you've been there 10 years and nothing has gotten better, I don't want you anymore. Hey man, we still cool. We can drink a shot of bourbon if you want to after work, but I don't want you up there representing me anymore because you're not getting the job done. That is my stance and I'm sticking to it. Yes, sir.
I was wondering if you think George Bush Sr. is going to be indicted for the assassination of JFK when he was in charge of the CIA.
No.
He won't.
No.
All right. Thank you all very much.